And when we were good morning. And as we were looking for a call to gather here today, we're pretty sure Sue wrote this. So join me in our call to worship. Watch and listen for the wonders of God.
God is among us.
Watch and listen for the goodness of God.
God
lives among us.
Watch and listen, for God is here.
God lives among us.
God the encourager, God the compassionate, God the merciful, holy, blessed.
Disturb us, rouse us from our sleep, lift us into the consciousness of your presence. Make us, move us, mold us for the better. The sound of your voice, call on our name. We will never be the same. Amen.
If these vestments look familiar to any of you, they belong to Sue. They were graciously given to our church to be used on very special sacred occasions. And we do so in honor. Can you hear me okay, or is no?
Yes.
How's that? Is that better? Much better. Let us go to God in prayer. Gracious and loving God, we seek your comfort today. We mourn the loss of our great friend and your faithful servant, Frances Sue Berry. The hole she has left in our lives is big. But we know that we can fill that hole with her memories, with the love that she shared with us. And we ask you to help us with that today. Help us to grieve. Help us to celebrate. Help us to fully feel the impact that Sue had on our lives. We ask in all your holy names. Amen. I would like to invite Greg and Virginia to come up and read a poem that their family wrote for Sue.
Greg wrote this poem 6 years ago. It's unbelievable, for Sue's 80th birthday. And we had no idea at the time that we would be doing this. But I must, before we do, say something about Sue's family and all the things that we might say here today about who she was and who she is. Was exemplified in the last 2 years or more from her family. She has the most loving and caring family, and these boys, I don't want to be sexist, but we all always say daughters come along and boys just are there, and these boys just came along and were just amazing, and we all watched. And the day Sue passed, we all read in obituaries that someone passed surrounded by family and friends. Well, Sue did. And she was also surrounded by dogs. Sue loved dogs. And it was such a beautiful time to see all of her family, as many as could be there, but all of the family dogs, including Soto, who came specially. And it was just a wonderful time. And it's been an example of the love that Sue had and the way she raised her family with such openness and honesty and caring came through when she needed them. They were really, really there. And thank God for that, because she had a rough couple of years and these guys should write a book about how to be great sons. I think we need that in this world.
Our Lady in Red. Much can be said about Our Lady in Red. She's generous, caring, artistic, and quirky. And then, of course, stubborn, driven, progressive, well-traveled, supportive, stylish, and a global thinker. And then, of course, 2 pastors she's bred.
What then of the red lady? So many sermons she's preached, so many liturgies she has read. She is the consummate hostess when she invites you to bread. And oh, of the small groups she has led. In so many ways, she's been years ahead.
Quite often her thinking hits the nail on the head. And then, of course, for Our Lady in Red, it has often been said, fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
She's our neighbor, our pastor, our close friend, and our fellow traveler.
We will never willingly shed Our Lady in Red. Thank you so much.
I'm going to sing a song that we've sung at our church many times called Let the Mystery Be. And it's by a songwriter named Iris DeMint. And I'm going to try to tweak my mask so I can keep it on and still breathe.
Does anyone mind if he takes it off?
I would not mind.
You would mind it?
Do you mind if he takes it off? No.
Let's do it.
Yes.
I have a little blue piece of tape down there. That's 12 feet away. Okay. Here it is. So this is a song called Let the Mystery Be. It's by Iris DeMint. And people who are members of our church, I know you've heard it before. If you haven't heard it before, what can I say about it? Is that, what's that?
You're going to hear it now.
You're going to hear it now. I think if there was a spectrum, a faith spectrum, and on one side was certainty and one side was mystery, Sue would be leaning more toward the mystery side of things, holding that mystery up and letting it be. And that's what this song is about. Everybody is wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody's worried about where they're going when the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, so it's all the same to me. I think I would start over. Sorry, Sue. Everybody's worried, I'm so sorry. Okay. I decided not to bring the lyrics because I wanted to sing it from my heart, but my heart is having a hard time finding them. Everybody's wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody's worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say once gone, you're gone forever. Some say you're gonna come back. Some say you'll rest in the arms of the Savior if it's sinful ways you lack. Some say they're coming back in a garden, bunch of carrots and little sweet peas. I think I'll just let the mystery be. 'Cause everybody's wondering what and where they all came from. Everybody's worried about where they're gonna go when the whole thing's done. No one knows for certain, so it's all the same to me. I think I'll just let the mystery be. Some say they're going to a place called glory, and I ain't saying that ain't a fact. But I've heard that I'm on the road to purgatory, and I don't like the sound of that. Now I believe in love, and I live my life accordingly. And I choose to let the mystery be. I believe in love, and I live my life accordingly. And I choose to let the mystery be. I choose to let the mystery be.
Now, you likewise, so you can hear me. I want to share one of my favorite scriptures with all of you. And I'm going to invite, oh, there it is. Thank you, Lee. If you would like to read along. It comes from the 14th chapter of John. And in the 13th chapter of John, Jesus is having a meal. I believe it was a Passover meal with his disciples. And he is preparing them for a time when he's not going to be around. He knows that his time on earth is short, and he knows that they are going to be lost without him. And so he says these words as recorded by John. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. I love this image of Jesus going on to prepare a place for the ones he loves, for the ones who are going to miss him, for the ones who are going to be seeking his presence and his comfort during the difficult time that's going to follow his death. And I love the idea that God has prepared a place for Sue Berry, a faithful servant of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And yet I cannot tell you with 100% certainty what that looks like, what that might be, where that is, how it's experienced. I don't have all the answers. Sue was comfortable not having all the answers, and she invited the questions. And we loved that about her. And I'm sure you did too. But I'm going to tell you right now, there are a few things I know for certain. I know that some of those questions have been answered for Sue. And don't you know, she would want so much to tell us all about it. She would love to have that theological conversation with us. I know another thing. I know that love never dies. Love never diminishes. Our memories might diminish. There might be hours, then days, then weeks where Sue doesn't come to our mind. But the love never diminishes. Because when she does come to our mind, all that love is going to come rushing back. All the love that we had for her, all the love that she had for us. And we're going to be able to feel that love and tap into that well of love whenever we need to. I know something else, and this might seem like a bold statement, but I know that Sue lives on. Sue lives on physically in her beautiful family. She lives on in her sons, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, physically, tangibly, in the traits that you have, in the way you look, in the way you carry yourself. She lives on in those little Sue-isms, those little phrases that Sue would use that you continue to repeat to one another. She lives on in your mannerisms. I don't know if you guys have ever looked at your children and saw your parents, but they're in there. And I know that Sue lives on in spirit, because I know Sue lives on in us, in our hearts and minds. We carry Sue with us. In all the words she spoke to us, in all the ways that she cared for us and comforted us as our pastor, as our mom, grandmother, friend. We will carry on Sue. And every time we remember her, we can bring her back to life for ourselves. And she will never die. It is those memories that we want to share right now. And everyone, including our friends on Zoom, are invited to share memories of Sue. If you feel moved to come up and speak at the podium, we would love to hear from you. If you would like to speak from Zoom, if you could raise your hand to the screen or click the little hand icon or just put something in the chat. Lee, through the magic of technology, is going to bring you here with us. Let us share our memories with Sue, and I'm going to invite her son, Tom, to go first.
How come the youngest gets to go before the
Yeah.
Because I called and asked before, I just said it before you did. Younger sons have to be tricky sometimes. Last Saturday, we had a service for my mom down at the church where we grew up as children, Bill and Jeff and I. And I officiated at that service, and it was good. I'm glad I did. And it was important to me, and it was helpful and healing and all sorts of good things. It was difficult, but it was good. This Sunday, or Saturday, see, if I stand in the pulpit, it has to be Sunday, right? It's gotta be. Today, I just want to say thank you to Sandy and all of the staff here at the church, to the members of this church, of this congregation, for allowing me just to be the son today. And just to be the son. It doesn't mean I won't try and get into pastor mode and have to stop a little bit, but it's nice to be the son. Which means I might start crying a little bit too soon, but that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I tell everybody else that every time I do one of these. I'm going to tell myself there's nothing wrong with that either. The last 2 years were rough. They were rough for my mom, especially because, as you know, all of you know, she was all about getting things done. And I'll talk more about that later. But for the last 2 years, her body did not let her do the things that she wanted to do. And that was difficult. And it was difficult, again, I think sometimes I'll speak for my brother, but I won't. He may nod his head, but I won't put words in his mouth. It was difficult for us to watch that, to see that. It was frustrating. Sometimes it was just frustrating dealing with her because we just wanted to say, Mom, take a deep breath, find some peace, just relax. And that wasn't an option. And as I was just kind of thinking about what I might say today, I made sure that I wasn't going to preach. I didn't write down my sermon like I did last week. But I told myself, think about what comes to your mind when you remember your mom 2 years ago and beyond. Not the mom that you have been coming down to see so often. And the first thing that popped into my mind was a story about doing laundry when I was probably in elementary school. And the reason that popped into my mind, I think, is because, again, if you know my mom, she had a very set way of doing things. There was a Sue Berry way of doing things. And that was really, really upsetting as a child, especially when she would check my homework. Because my homework was my homework. And by the time my mom got done with it, I felt like she had redrafted anything that I had done and had given me suggestions on how to do it. And we knocked heads a lot back in those days about what was mine and what was hers and all of that. But, you know, she raised me and she raised me well. And even though she had that later in life, even though she had her ways of doing things, she was always very open-minded. She always listened to other people and she was not afraid to change. So as the story goes, before she taught me how to do my own laundry, and after many, many pairs of pink underwear, I learned how to do that. She used to do our laundry and she would fold it and put it on the bed. And it was my job to put it in the drawers. And so I would just grab it, open the first drawer that was open, shove it all in the drawer and close it. And then she would come back because she knew me and she would check my work. And she would open that top drawer and, you know, and she would, the bottom 2 drawers or 3 drawers were empty and everything was just jammed into that drawer. And so she'd say, you know, if you put your socks and underwear in the top drawer, if you put your shirts in the middle drawer, your pants in the bottom drawer, then you will know every time where those are. And you could open one drawer and take it out and close it. Open the next drawer, take it out and close it. Open the third drawer, take it out and close it. And I looked her in the eye and said, yeah, Mom, but my way, if I open up one drawer, chances are I got everything I need right there. And she smiled and she laughed. And she never bothered me about it again. So, you know, she made sure that I knew what she felt was right. And she had a lot of influence on me. But she also was able to listen. And I know she did that as she progressed from I wouldn't say a conservative Presbyterian, but a Presbyterian of 70 some odd years ago, or 80, a birth, a cradle Presbyterian, but, you know, as she started to develop her theology, I think that's part of how she got to where she is now. And this congregation meant so much to her. I know she enjoyed giving as a pastor, but she enjoyed receiving as a member of this community. And she and I talked about that a lot. Not long after she passed, somebody said, I know this must be hard for you, but take comfort. And they said this in a very loving way. You know that your mother is now resting in peace. And I said, well, I think she's at peace, but I don't think she's resting. I don't think, and at first I kind of felt that was a terrible thing to say about my mom, but I came to realize that my mom found peace by keeping busy, by moving forward, by ministering professionally and as a friend, by traveling, by being a host. Just so many things that she did. And yeah, sometimes I wish she would have slowed down. And sometimes I wish she would have been able to find peace. I know she has peace now. The last thing she said to me before she came home, I was sitting with her in the hospital. My youngest was able to come down and be with her, and she knew who she was. And they talked, and that was good because the last time my youngest came down, she was in the hospital, and only Bill and I got to see her. We had to fight to see her for what, 45 minutes or an hour to get in there, and that was, you know, in the middle of COVID. But I was sitting by her bed with her in the hospital, and I said, "How you doing, Mom?" And she said, "I think I'm dying." And I said, "How does that make you feel?" She said, "I'm scared." And I said, "Mom, do you think you can find some?" "No, I cannot." And that's my mom, and I will always love her for that. She was not going to stop until, however you understand that, whether her body gave up, whether the good Lord called her home, whatever your understanding of that is, Sue Berry was going to keep moving. And I will always remember her for that. Bill, do you want to follow or?
I'll start by saying I never had any problems with my homework, so there was in that regard with me and my mom. Gosh, a lot to say. I hope I don't ramble too much. I do want to say a couple of thank yous, certainly Sandy, for helping us all with this, and your kind words, nice words, spot on words so far. I don't know if you heard when she was talking about the Sueisms, if you guys heard any giggling from the front row here between my brother and my niece and I. There were certainly some Sueisms which cannot be repeated in polite company of the church. So we will stop anyone. No,
Not here.
I certainly want to thank Virginia and Greg for the poem, for the foresight, like you said, 6 years ago, putting that together, reading it. Greg and Virginia live across the street from my mom, have been wonderful neighbors to her the whole time she's been back up here since she retired up to Marietta. Yeah, Virginia knows my mom really well, and in the earlier days it was, gosh, Bill, the only time we see your mom is when she's driving out of the colony to head down to San Diego or up to San Bernardino or up to Riverside, So the whole thing about, always moving forward, Virginia has recognized that for a long time. So as much as I appreciate them, I do have a little bit of an issue with Greg and Virginia. And Greg, my apologies if I'm sharing too much here, but my mom a couple of years ago, early 2019, she suffered a stroke. Prior to that, Greg had suffered a stroke, a series of strokes, and they had knocked him down very hard. And it was touch and go whether Greg was going to survive or not. Greg survived, and Greg flourished. I mean, he recovered incredibly. Unfortunately, all strokes are not created equal. The human brain is that's certainly one thing I've learned in the last 2 years is how mysterious and unknowable almost the human brain is. And so certainly not all strokes are created equal by any means, and they affect different people differently. But and on the one hand, I was happy that my mom had Greg as a role model, but she was just convinced that she was going to recover as much as Greg had, and that just was not in the cards. But that was a constant discussion between her and I, and she was convinced that if she did enough physical therapy and she did enough electrical stimulation of her arms and legs, that she would recover just as well as Greg did. So thanks, Greg. Jamie, thank you very much for the song today, warts and all. The warts made it just that much more special. But I do want to point out that when my mom was and I have to think, which rehab facility am I talking about? Because she was in 4 or 5 different ones, thanks to COVID and other things, as well as her health. But she was down in Generations in the south end of Temecula. That was the last rehab she was before she went into the hospital for the last time before she went home. Jamie came there and sang her a song there in rehab, and it was very, very special. It was special to me. Nina McLean from the congregation was there. It was special to her, and it was special to Mom. She was still lucid enough there to really kind of understand that. She tried to sing along a little bit, and it was very touching, very moving. So Jen, thank you again for that. Yeah, as Tom mentioned, we did this last week down in San Diego. My mom has she has enclaves of friends around the nation, maybe even around the world. So, and some of her friends in San Diego are friends that she's had for 60 years or more. So to ask some of those very, very close dear friends of hers to make the trip up here for a service, we thought was probably a little bit much, and we owed it to them to have a service down there last week, which we did. And it went well. It was not like this service. It was very different. So that's nice for us that it's different. So it's not like just like what we did last week. It's very different. Now that morning, last Saturday morning, as I got up to do that, my wife said, "Hey, there's water gushing out of the front lawn." I said, "What?" And I looked, yeah, and the water main between our sidewalk and the house had broken. And that was last Saturday on the morning before that. So I could tell some neat stories about that, but I'll cut that part out. But so it was like, okay, here I am today, thinking what could, now last week I had a broken water main. What could happen this morning that would top that? And then got out of the shower, looked at my phone, and said, "Tsunami warning, Southern California." And well, they tried, but that wasn't quite enough. The idea that tsunami wave coming all the way up to Santa Margarita, turning up Murrieta Creek and showing up back here, and I'm not sure about it. So anyway. Again, the words that Virginia spoke about myself and my brothers and Sue's family and the support were very touching, and I thank you for those. My aunt, my mom's sister, my mom's only sibling, fairly, I think, poignantly pointed out that my mother's, the beginning of my mother's journey to the end began when my brother died in 2017. That's when she did not recover from that, and that put her on the glide path to the end. And when I think about that, there's not something I can argue with at all. And I think that was very insightful. And when you mentioned what we were doing for him, and it's, gosh, I'm not that I don't miss my brother every single day, but I've certainly missed him so much more in the last 2 years, because he would have been an amazing help to deal with my mother. He would have shared the burden with Tom and I, and shared probably the lion's share of it, because that's just who my brother Jeff was. I mean, he did so much more for my mom while he was alive, I think, that I had done for. I'm not trying to push anything off on him or say that I was a bad son, but he was much more involved in her life and helping her than I had been. So as Virginia said, we have to step up. Yeah, I did. I had to step up, believe it a little bit more, because my brother Jeff wasn't there to help me. So that made it even a little bit more bittersweet, and now to reflect that, we lost my father, we lost my brother, now we've lost my mom. Just Tom and I forging ahead. So it's interesting. Sandy, you said that Sue's got some of the answers up there. I think you're right, but I bet you she's still arguing with somebody up there about those answers, interpretation of those answers. Yeah, I think she's getting some peace, but I think she's just carrying on the tradition of Sue. But so my mom as a person, again, it's not till you get older that you realize the experience of the youngest brother or the youngest child and the oldest child, and their relationship with their mom are very different. When you're growing up, you don't realize that really. But you realize that as you get older. And now the difference between Tom's and my ages doesn't mean anything. But back when we were kids, then the 4 years was a big deal. But what I mentioned this at her 80th birthday. What still amazes me is in 1965 she had 3 boys, 5 and under, and when my father said, "Hey, we've got the opportunity to go take a sabbatical from his his teaching professorship at San Diego State. We've got opportunity to do a sabbatical. We're going to go to Baghdad, Iraq for a year. How about that?" And again, I don't know. I wasn't privy to the conversation. Obviously, I was only 5, but the fact that she agreed, whatever they decided, however they decided, she decided to go and take again 3 boys under 5 to Baghdad, Iraq, which was a very different country, different setting than it is now, but still it was a very, very, very different place. And then 3 years later did that again in Oslo, Norway. So that really gave me those 2 experiences really shaped me as a person. It gave me a much different worldview, I think, than a lot of kids, maybe except for some of the kids who whose parents are in the military that travel overseas a lot. But we were less, the military can get a little enclave, overseas and kind of bring the culture, the U.S. culture in a bubble with them, the way they have things set up for them, specifically for that reason. For us, we in Norway, we went to Norwegian public school, and although Tom did get to go to he got to go to the American kindergarten. So it was, again, it was just a wonderful experience for me. A little scary at the time, but looking back on it, just gave me that a much better view of how myself and my family and my nation fits into the larger world. How much more there is out there, and how different how many different types of people there are out there, but they kind of everybody still kind of wants the same thing. So, I am trying to remember if I missed anything, but I don't think so. I did want to acknowledge that that in addition to myself and Tom, Sue's grandchildren, Claudia, who is my niece, is here. Her grandson, Warren, who is my son, is here. Her daughter-in-law, Georgina, Jeff's wife, is here. And I'm not sure exactly how to refer the relationship between my mom and your mother-in-law, but we'll let other people figure that out. So your mother-in-law is here with you as well. We're glad that they are all here, as well as my son's girlfriend, Sarah. And so they're all here to share. Fortunately, my daughter was going to be here, but wasn't able to make it. So thank you very much for being here and coming to share. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share a story about Sue? You're welcome to share it here or afterwards. Yeah.
My name is Nancy Richmond. I was on committee, Riverside Presbytery Committee, for a few years with Sue. And I consider her a friend, although not as close as others, but still. We were for a few years together on what's called the SMART Committee, which is the prevention of sexual harassment. And we were tasked, Sue and I, to revise the policy for that committee. Now, I am very detail oriented, have legal background. And Sue and I got on famously in revising that because she also was very detail oriented. And it was a pleasure working with her. We also had many times when we met at gatherings related to Presbytery, and also a few lunches, just the two of us. So for sure, I wanted to be here today. You who know her perhaps much better than I, as you've heard from her sons, the depth of Sue, and indeed a great servant of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's why I am here, Sharon.
Stand on the chair, Donna.
Don't stand on the, do not stand on the chair. Don't worry about it. Just stand up and touch it. Right here.
Hi, I'm Donna Richards, and I'm one of the early members of this church from the beginning. And when Sue joined us, it was a treasure coming to us, and to her being part of our church service and other book clubs and other things we did here, and memorial services that we did here. I would go over and let her help me, go over what I had put together and her thoughts on it. And so we had excellent services with her input. And I know she liked to do puzzles. I did puzzles with her and play games and stuff like that. She loved that. And we were able to take dinners to her, and she was able to participate in, sharing her love with everybody here at the church. And she would just really be missed. And she was this great part that you could go and talk theology with her, or what was going on in the church, because she had a different input than a lot of us. And she brought us even closer to God, and I will miss her talks.
Hello, my name is Mary Odendahl, and we came to San Diego in 1964 and met the Berry family. We have been very close to them. We've traveled together, we've camped together. One special travel that we had was to Greece with Sue and Garnett, and Eric, my husband, was always so proud that he was able to make that trip with 3 beautiful women, even though 2 of them were Presbyterian ministers. Sue also recommended me to the Presbytery of San Diego. They were looking for an administrative secretary, and I got the job and was with them for 17 years. There's just so many things that we've done together through the years, and we've been close friends. When Sue came back to California, she joined our Soulmates group. We met once a month, and it started out being a very spiritual meeting, but it ended up our solving all the problems of the world and really listening to each other and helping each other out. So I just want to say how much I cared for Sue and her family. Very, very special people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, we have Zoom up. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else on the Zoom?
I think that was it. Oh, there we go. Paula?
Yes, my name's Paula Mann. I first met Sue in her first call in Indianapolis, and then she moved and I moved, and I've actually landed in Los Angeles. And Sue's been both a pastor and friend over the years. And then when the pastor today stood up wearing the robe that Sue wore, I wanted to share that Sue wore that robe at my installation service back in early 2009 and gave me my charge at my first call. So that robe, I'm sure, has seen many highs and lows in many people's lives, and I'm glad that it will continue to be a part of people's lives, and Sue's presence may be felt. And Sue was a very dear friend. I'm glad to be here with you today. Thank you.
Doesn't look like it.
I wanted to say something.
Paula Mann works for the Senate, and I have dealings with her regularly. I'm Lee Ireland, and I'm the Presbytery leader for the Riverside Presbytery. And I just wanted to tell you how much I've heard about Sue at that particular time when Sue was the stated clerk. I don't know how many of you are Presbyterians, but when the stated clerk speaks, you listen and you don't question anything. And Sue, my experiences with her were really that she would be very helpful, very kind, and but very direct. And what she said is what was going to be. So we really appreciated her service in the Presbytery, and we thank you from everything I understand how you cared for her in the last few years. So God bless you.
I told myself I wasn't going to talk because I didn't want to cry. I may be one of the few people. I know where Sue is. With every ounce of my being, I know where she is. And I know she is at peace. She's not resting. I truly believe Sue is dancing with the angels. After Sue had her first stroke, she struggled quite a bit. And there was a lot of anger in her for not being able to maneuver her body the way it had did before. And I would pick her up sometimes and bring her to church if she felt she was strong enough to do that. And we would go to dinner or to lunch once in a while. I'd pick her up and we'd go to lunch. And one of the times I said something about, you know, I really love sushi. I'm really craving it. She says, oh my God, do you like sushi? I said, yeah. She said, I do too. And she says, I can't get anybody to take me. I said, well, we'll fix that. And there's an outstanding sushi restaurant right on the other side of Jefferson from us. And the choir group used to meet there once in a while on Thursdays before choir practice. And so a couple of times I took Sue on a Thursday before choir practice. They had like specials and so on that made the cost of it rather reasonable. But I remember the first time I took her, and she says, I really don't like all the rice. I said, I've got just the thing for you. So I told her about the Fifth Avenue, which is albacore tuna, and it's wrapped around a bed of crab. No rice at all. That was her dish. And the other thing is she said, you know, I really want a glass of plum wine. I said, go for it. She said, but it might make me a little tipsy. I said, so who cares? You're not driving. So she ordered the plum wine. So the two of us sat there and she really started to feel that plum wine, I think with the medication and everything and so on. So she said, oh my gosh, she says, this is just too much. I said, well, I don't even drink, let alone I don't like wine, but I'll split it with you so you don't feel bad leaving it there. So the two of us sat, well, Sue got tipsy on plum wine, eating Fifth Avenue sushi. And there will never be a time that I don't have sushi that I don't think was scary. And even though no, I don't drink, I will raise my cup of tea and say, here's to you, my friend.
I'm not gonna stand up again, but I do want to add, I went through my thanks, and as Debbie pointed out, I mean, she had her first stroke. She spent several weeks in Temecula Valley Hospital, and then she transferred down to an acute rehab hospital in Escondido. And I went down there, I think, just about every day to see her at that time. And I only remember one person coming down to visit her, and that was Debbie Hudson. And well, that's thank you for that. Well, there's good. I'm glad there were more than that. We just must not, our paths must not have crossed over there. So I appreciate that all, but certainly that stands out in my mind. Debbie's being there and us being there with my mom together. And all this.
You left your keys at mom's house.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the first time. And to put it in a little bit of perspective about some of the things that Debbie said, was that, you know, my family, our family, Thomas and my family, growing up, mom, dad, 3 boys, all 5 of us were left-handed. And my mother was, you know, left-handed. She had a stroke that paralyzed the left side of her body. So at, you know, age, whatever she was at the time, 82, being left-handed your whole life, having to learn to be right-handed at age 82. So I, you know, imagining her using chopsticks to eat sushi,
She actually did.
You know,
She
with
actually
her right
did.
hand would be, and with the wine on top of that.
Oh, yeah, it was, we got to know the waitress quite well at that little restaurant.
Right. So when, you know, when Debbie mentioned her anger or her frustration with her body, that was a big part of it. I mean, she had to learn to write again. She had to learn to feed herself again. And this was, you know, as you all know, how fiercely independent she is. The idea, and in fact, we were the last couple of weeks, we've been cleaning out her house, and we found this thing that one of the therapists had given her. It's a little, it's like a little edge, plastic collar that you put on a plate that gives it an edge so that you can push against it with your fork, you know, to get the food on your fork. And I remember when she left that there, and the therapist left, and my mom looked at this, I don't need that. And it was still in its bag. It's still in its bag. We found it last week. So yes, it was it you know, having to learn to walk and having to learn to write and to feed herself, to dress herself with only one hand, and that being her non-dominant hand that she was learning to use. That was very challenging for her. And her first for better or worse, her first stroke robbed her of some of her physical ability, but it didn't really rob her of any of her mental acuity. And it wasn't until, so she was that way for a year or so and was confident that she was going to continue to improve. And even if she couldn't, her leg didn't work the way she wanted to when she walked, she learned how to fake it and use her hip to whip it around the way she wanted and all that. And so she was making the progress. But then, in 2020, when she fell and hit her head, and bless her heart, in the middle of COVID, she bumped her head, and I came over. I don't remember if it was myself or my son that got there first and got her up. But because of the COVID, she was, as most people, especially older people, was a little afraid of COVID and did not want to go to the hospital. So I think she kind of fibbed to me about how hard she had bumped herself when she on that fall, and so that ended up resulting in a subdural hematoma, which one of her caregivers is here, who was the one that discovered her that Friday morning in a very bad state. And so she had a subdural hematoma, she had one or more strokes, and she had a cardiac arrest with a full stoppage. If that had not happened in a rehab hospital with CPR and with a ER next door, it's quite possible she would not have survived that. But she had that in the course of about 10 weeks, those three things. And unfortunately, those, one or all of them did then have the impact on her mind. And so that made it the after that, her fierce independence and stubbornness, independence, coupled with multiple brain injuries, it got very interesting to watch her, because she then created a very complex mythology about how she didn't need any assistance and how she was going to make this full or near full recovery and go back home and live by herself again. So, and many of you, experienced that part of her over the last year and a half. So, yeah, I mean, as each of you come up and say something, Debbie did, it just brings back another memory or another thank you or something else. That I'll be quiet for a little while.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes.
Of course.
My name is Carolyn Adamson. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I want to say hello and my deep affection for Sue, whom I met when we were 16 years old at church camp in Fulton, Missouri. That was 69 years ago. And then when I transferred to Lindenwood College in 1957, we became classmates and graduated together there in 1958. And we were able to keep in touch from various places around the United States, and we're so pleased to reconnect when she moved to Southern California, and we as well. So I'm just, she was loved and respected at Lindenwood. She's been kind to our family. She has been inspiring in her own faith journey that I've been able to dip into a little bit. And it's just a great pleasure to be able to honor her and to celebrate a 69-year friendship. I cannot tell you how meaningful she has been in our lives. And to take it way back, her parents in Springfield, Missouri, Howard Potter and Mrs. Potter, were so kind to me when I was an undergraduate. They would come up to Lindenwood in St. Charles, Missouri, the first capital of the state, take us out to dinner in St. Louis, and we would just have a delightful time, including her roommate, Betty Miller of Jefferson City. And we were just a welcome trio of college girls, hosted, Bill and Tom, by your very gracious parents. And so thank you for letting me chime in here and say blessings and my great affection for Sue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Claudia Fonseca, one of Sue's granddaughters. I had it all in my head. Don't say this, I'm good. I am Jeff Berry's daughter, and I think that's the hardest part. But after you've mentioned, you know, we have a lot of Sueisms in us, and that's what I was thinking about. And I think puzzling is hereditary. I am a great puzzler. My dad was a puzzler, so was she, definitely.
She'd like to start puzzles.
Yeah. Well, we'd show up for Christmas and we'd finish them.
That's right.
And I just really appreciate hearing all your guys' stories and how you guys got to live among her, with her, be part of her life daily. There has always been a physical distance between where she was and where we were growing up. And so I saw her more in hostess mode when we'd go to visit for lunch, you know, on a Sunday or for Christmas or whatever it may be, whatever we were celebrating. So I saw her more in grandma hostess mode. And I really, you know, love that you got to go eat sushi with her and you guys saw her and we're on a committee together. And I just really appreciate hearing those stories, that side of her life. What, you know, would have enjoyed to be part of, but it wasn't in the cards, and that's okay. I really enjoyed getting to visit her and got to go to Indiana, visit her there and come up here. And my husband and I moved up to Fresno a few years back. So, and I went through cancer treatment. And so I didn't get to see her these past few years. But she would call me and check on me and see how my treatments were going. And wasn't sure, like, I don't think they should be doing it this way. And I'm like, well, this is what my doctor told me. So I did appreciate that. And looking back, you know, the Sueisms, her and I, very strong. I would say we're very strong women. Go, go, go. I'm like, yeah, that's me too. Always on the go, always finding something new to do. Part of education, she worked in special education. I worked in special education. I was a middle school math teacher as well. And just giving back to the community. And even though we didn't get to see each other very daily, you know, on a daily basis, I definitely got that from her. And you know, even physically, I might not look like these guys, but if you put her baby picture, you wouldn't think we were, you know, related. But if you put her baby pictures together, mine, my brother's, my dad's, even my niece's picture, you would think it was the same baby. We looked identical, and I'm assuming, you know, but there's there too. You think we're all.
Except that your dad was a toe. Yes, your brother,
Yes.
yeah, your brother and his dad baby pictures could be the same as was yours.
Yes, so I do believe that, yes. And, you know, my niece always sees my baby pictures and thinks it's her. I'm like, oh, that's me. But so yeah, I really appreciate hearing all these stories, and I told her, oh, it was not surprised, and my makeup probably is all over my face. I apologize. But I really appreciate hearing all your guys' stories, and thank you so much for sharing and being here. So, thank you.
Yes, our mom loved starting puzzles and she loved falling asleep at movie theaters.
And it looks like Warren's gonna come up, and as he's coming up, I think I'm gonna just take the mic one more time, because I forgot to, I think I said thank you for having us here, but as I hear these stories, it really does remind me just how much you were all part of my mom's life. And so thank you. Thank you for being there with her, for those who drove her places, for those who just checked in on her, for those who called her on the phone, who brought meals. Thank you. And I forgot to say this at the last service, but I will say it today. Virginia, you mentioned about how impressed you were with her sons, and thank you for that. And I'm not trying to say, oh, shucks, it's not. I'm the son in Southern Oregon, 14-hour drive down. And when I could, I was here as fast as I could be. And if that makes me a good son, then thank you. This one here, Presbyterians don't offer out sainthood, I don't think. It's not part of our polity. But if we did, I just have to say that out loud in front of as many people as I can. Thank you, Bill, for everything you did.
Hi, I'm Warren. I'm Bill's son, Sue's grandson. I'll be very quick. Like my cousin Claudia said, for a long time in my life, when I saw Grandma, I was in hostess mode because she was in Indiana. And the first real memory I had of her before she moved down here to retire was when we took that first trip to Indiana for pretty much a whole summer. I was very fortunate living about 15 minutes away that I could spend time with her as I was a late teen young adult and got to experience a very different side of her. I'm terrible with faces. However, a lot of the names here, especially the people involved with the committees, Sandy, your name stands out to me. Lee Ireland, your name stands out as well. Debbie, Virginia, and Greg, for all of you, I'm terrible with faces, but I know all of your names from her keeping so busy and all of her work with the presbytery, because I would go over many weekends or after school to work around her house. She was busy. She also would keep me busy as well, whether it was working in the garden, going through the mountain of files and computer documents related to the presbytery, or the never-ending task of organizing her email inbox. She was the Christmas lights as well, the Christmas dishes, lots of peace, no rest, and she passed that on. So again, to those people whose names I recognize, she was active with that, and it was, even as someone who is not a member of this church, and it's all kind of a little bit foreign to me, I could see how much it meant to her and how active and important it was to her. So thank you for that, and thank you for being that part of her life and mine. Thank you.
Again, sorry, I gotta jump in again. With again, Warren reminded me that, again, falls became a big part of the last couple of years of her life, because again, the fierce independence and the stubbornness and not wanting to accept help, and her as her neurologist pointed out, with a right side brain injury, you don't always fully understand or comprehend the extent of your deficits. So I don't think she realized the condition she was in. So I would get called, hey, Bill, I fell. And usually she would fall and be okay, but without the use of her left side, she wasn't able to get up by herself. Sometimes she'd find a friend nearby to get up. She spilled out of her scooter once in the middle of the road, and neighbors were able to pick her up and get her up. So she would call me and say, Bill, I fell, and so I'd come over. One time she didn't call me. She said, she called me she said the next morning, she called me, she said, Bill, I fell last night and I didn't want to bother you. So I just pulled the covers off the bed, made a nest on the floor. And now it's 8 o'clock on Saturday. Can you come get me up off the floor? And so, yeah, so I chastised her a little bit for that, but. And so that was nice. As Tom pointed out, I'm only about 15 minutes away, so she would fall, I get there pretty quick. Except the time that she fell on Friday evening about 5 o'clock. And if, those of you who live locally, 5 o'clock on a Friday, a 15-minute drive from Temecula to her house is about a 45-minute drive. And so on that occasion, I called my son, who was visiting his girlfriend, who lived much closer to the colony where mom lives. I said, hey, Warren, grandma fell. It's going to take me 45 minutes. I'm on my way, but it's going to take me at least another half hour to get there. Can you get over there? He's on it. He got there much quicker than I could. And got her up off the floor, and then we got her got there. So, yeah, just more interesting memories. Go ahead, my sister-in-law.
She's gonna jump.
Oh.
Spanish. Yo soy su nuera mexicana.
I'm her daughter-in-law, Mexican daughter-in-law.
Cuando me casé con su hijo.
When I got married to her son.
Ella fue muy buena conmigo.
She was really good to her.
Nunca sentí que me vio diferente.
I never felt that she looked any different.
And no quiero hablar mucho.
I don't want to talk a lot. I couldn't talk a lot.
Tengo tantos recuerdos de ella.
I have a lot of memories of her.
Venía 2 veces al año a mi casa.
She would come twice a year. So when she lived in Indiana, she'd come twice a year to the house.
And she pasaba mucho tiempo conmigo.
She spent a lot of time with me.
Porque Jeff, mi esposo.
Because my husband Jeff.
Trabajaba muchísimo.
He worked a lot as a professor, Spanish professor.
Y siempre me sentí muy cerca de ella.
I always felt close to her.
Yo no tenía a mi mamá aquí, yo no tenía familia aquí.
I didn't have my mom here. I didn't have family here.
Y ella fue muy buena conmigo.
She was really good with me, really good to me.
Y como siento tan triste que yo no podía estar cerca de ella en los últimos años que ella estuvo.
In these past few years, I felt, really sad that I couldn't be there for her on a daily basis because of the commute.
Y solo puedo decir que fue un honor para mí.
I can only say that it was an honor for me to have her as my mother-in-law.
Thank you so much for your friendship.
Thank you for your friendship.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say again how important Sue was to United Church of the Valley. I got to work with her a few times, rather closely. And there was a moment a few years ago when we entered a period where we had no pastor. And some of us, including me, were very excited about this possibility. And Sue was excited about this. We talked about who had certain gifts and who could fill certain roles and how we could rotate. And she was so encouraging and excited about this possibility. Lynn drafted Sue and I to work together quite a bit on writing some of our service vocabulary, what we were writing, our service order and some of the calls to worship and various things that we would use in service. And she had this wonderful willingness and to want to balance language that would speak to the traditionally religious minded folks in our congregation who wanted that traditional religious language, but also to those of us on the other end who were either progressive or maybe radical in our theology. And she would check in, well, what do you think? Does this work for you? Do you think this will work for so-and-so? Do you think this will work for so-and-so? And then she and I got to work together closely on we went through a period where we decided, let's try and have a pastor again, one's, senior pastor. And she and I got to serve together on a pastoral search and call committee. And she brought so many of her gifts to bear with that. And then she and I served on a very small 3-person pastoral care committee once we did call a senior pastor. And I'll be honest, that was an extremely difficult time for the church. And a lot of that landed on the pastoral care committee, including Sue. And that was when she had her first stroke. And I always kind of wondered about the stress that time, added to her life, which, saddened me. But when I think of Sue, I think of that firm wisdom, but I think of it being leavened with grace. And I think of hospitality. How many of those meetings we had, and it was her place. And she just made us feel so welcome. I mean, eventually I was on the permanent guest list at the colony. Oh yeah, you, all right, I get in there. And I'll just share last thing I'll share is my favorite Sue-ism. And this is a clean one. Is we'd be chatting about something and maybe I'd say something that went just a little bit too far, a little bit too radical. And she would just pause and maybe even lift an eyebrow. And she would say, I don't think so.
Anyone else want to share? All right.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I'm Mavis Akiyoshi, and I met Sue when she first moved into the colony. I visited her, and she was so excited to talk to somebody. We became good friends, and we became travel friends. We went to Mexico quite a few times. We went to Alaska, and it was in winter, and we sunbathed on our balcony because it was so warm. But we were a little bit like rebels, where we went with a travel group from the colony. We didn't do what they did. And both of them agreed that it was much more fun exploring the no admittance areas. And we took our swimsuits and we swam in what wasn't for the public to swim in. And when we were told by our group that we had to be down ready for the theater at this time, it meant we'd have to sit there an hour. And we said, we're not going to do that. And so we didn't. We went and listened to a music program or something like that. So we were, when we went with this travel group, they weren't always real happy we were there because we didn't do what they wanted to do. Now, because my husband is Japanese, we enjoyed sushi, so I introduced Sue to sushi. And where's that little lady? Yes, all right. Sue and I love palm wine. And we go to have a sushi in Marietta. And we'd say we'd like, and the waitress would always say, would you like wine? And we said, yes, plum wine. And I always said, and fill it to the top, please. Do you know that waitress knew us and she did? She filled it to the top. And we went for sushi quite frequently. Also, Sue liked to garden and I liked to garden. So we did gardening together. And she was grateful that you came in. She always kept me. Yes. Very grateful for that. But we had a lot of fun. And sadly, we were going to have a meeting at Sue's house the day she had a stroke. I got there early and she wouldn't listen. she was very determined that she was going to get up. And she would. Yes, that was the start of her long, determined to do what she was going to do, right? But she was a good friend.
Before we do the prayer and move on, I wanted to just add, waiting sort of to the end, most of you have already stolen my thunder, but I know the same Sue that most of you described. Although certainly I certainly agree with her independence and her determination, which I admired and which I felt was a positive. I had the pleasure of working closely with her on liturgy quite a few times, and boy, I didn't feel any sense of that this is the way it has to be. It was a very cooperative, but I was the one that was learning a lot more than, and she was sharing, but in a way that still made me feel that I was an equal partner, which I knew I wasn't. And I appreciated that. Frequently, some of those exchanges happened pretty late at night. I would had sent something out. This is where we are, and when you get a chance. And then I would see an email that was posted at 1:30 in the morning or something. But I loved the opportunity to learn from her and to exchange with her. One of my first memories of working together was actually, we had an English as a second language program, and Sue had volunteered to be one of the tutors, and was enjoyed. It was a very informal thing. We followed. We had some materials, but you kind of had to create it around this particular student and the needs of that particular student. And we both enjoyed that a lot, and had lots of good times together. And I think along those times was the first time I realized that she had a connection with Norway, and that kind of was an immediate connection there. That was always fun to revisit. Anyway, she will live on. I mean, certainly here at the church, a lot of the liturgies that we use have Sue's stamp on them. And in fact, the prayer that we're going to read in just a moment does indeed. Was somebody trying to tell me something? No? Okay. So we will move on to the prayer that many of you probably know as the Lord's Prayer. One of the discussions, one of the deep theological discussions that we've had here at the United Church of the Valley was what we do with this prayer that has such antiquated language. Many churches, in fact, the church I grew up in, we've got rid of the these and the thous and the Shakespearean language. But we had a great discussion about that. And we finally have decided that for many of us, that prayer adds, as we learned it from our grandparents, has meaning in tying us to our ancestors. But then Sue presented another prayer that makes so much sense. And so now our tradition is to do the prayer as our ancestors have learned it, and some of us learned it as children, and then to do a more contemporary version. And we're so grateful to Sue for bringing that up and gifting that to us. And every time we do it, we certainly remember Sue. So let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors.
Save us from the time of trial.
And deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Our Mother, who is in heaven and within us, we call upon your names. Your wisdom come, your will be done in all the spaces in which you dwell. Give us each day sustenance and perseverance. Remind us of our limits as we give grace to the limits of others. Separate us from the temptation of empire, but deliver us into your community. For you are the dwelling place within us, the empowerment around us, and the celebration of
up and prepare for our postlude. Donna's going to give a very heartfelt rendition. Come right up here. And that way I can get you with that. This one. It makes the loss a little easier for all of us to bear. And may we share everything that Sue has taught us with everyone we meet.